I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 200, Real Women Living Naturally Thin, Part 1. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. Get ready to learn how to live in your dream body, free from all the diet rules. You're going to learn the naturally thin mindset and strategies so that you never need to count, track, or measure your food ever again. And instead, you get to live the rest of your life at your body's optimal weight with the peace and freedom you've been craving. Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome to this week's podcast episode. So today is episode 200, and you probably are not paying attention to the episode number, but I wanted to make this episode something a little extra special since it's been about 4 years now that we have been doing this podcast together, and I've been creating it for you and you've been listening to it. And I wanted to share with you clips from podcast interviews that I've done before and previously on the podcast with real women who are living their naturally thin lives. And I want to allow you to be able to listen to this podcast episode and the next podcast episode and really reconnect potentially to the hope and the desire and the knowing that you too can live your unique naturally thin life, that you truly can have any relationship with food and your body that you want. So today I have 5 clips from women who have previously been on the podcast. So you can, of course, go back and listen to their full podcast episodes. And I'm going to just briefly introduce each woman and kind of call out a couple of things to just keep in mind as you listen to what she wants to share. So I can't wait for you to reconnect to your naturally thin future and remind yourself that your body truly is designed to live your unique naturally thin life. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so first up today, we have Harris. So Harris is a medical doctor. She suffered from orthorexia, which is an obsession with healthy eating and kind of feeling really kind of neurotic about it. And she shares in our conversation how hard she found it was to actually learn to be proud of herself. And that was a really big challenge for her in living her naturally thin life, and how she was able to have so many accomplishments in her life, to make so much progress, not just in her relationship with food and her relationship with exercise and her relationship with her weight, but in her career as a medical doctor. And she started a new practice where she was living, and she has so many accomplishments, and she had a baby during all of this. And she shares how really taking that moment and that time to let herself be proud of her own progress has allowed her to feel more calm and more joy-filled. And I think this is just a very common thing that sometimes humans do, where we gloss over our progress, but especially those of us that are like super high achievers, where we just are on to the next thing. And I want you to hear in her story not only how she was able to overcome a relationship with food and her body that wasn't serving her, but how when she took that time to be proud of her own accomplishments, that has provided her with the confidence to do more, to accomplish more, not less, because then you get to carry that pride with you into the future. So let's hear from Harris.
I tried many diets when I was younger, but I'm someone that actually stopped dieting many years ago. I explored other known diet methods for working on your relationship to food and your weight. At some point, I was given a diagnosis of orthorexia because over the years, I developed such an obsession with healthy eating and clean eating and macros and nutrients and all that, and an obsession with exercise, that actually it was a total nightmare, actually. And I came to the point where I got a serious sports injury after training very hard for a half marathon while being obsessed with counting and healthy eating and all of that. So at that point, I knew that. For some reason, I felt like there is this conditioning we get from society that during pregnancy, it's not the right time to focus on your weight, on your body, on yourself, on what you're eating. I found during my first trimester, when I had not used the back as much, I was very nauseous during my first trimester. The way I experienced fatigue, the way I exercised changed. And towards the end of the first trimester, I realized that actually I am tuning into my body. I've changed my eating habits to serve me because I was nauseous. I was eating smaller meals more frequently. I found that my body was asking for a lot more carbs than I would normally have, different things than I would normally have. And I realized that actually, perhaps it's actually a great opportunity to keep using my backheads, to keep using all of the tools from Naturally Thin for Life, because this is one of the best times to listen to my body, tune in, and really do what is best for me and the baby I'm growing inside of me. And around that time, just when I was exiting the first trimester, you released the 90-day workbook and you took us through a live 90-day Naturally Thin for Life experience. So it was totally amazing. It was such a transformative experience for me to use the workbook while being pregnant and while watching all of the changes. During pregnancy, usually we embrace the changes our body goes through. So what an amazing time to actually love on yourself.
Yeah.
In a recent call we had, and you said, could you tell yourself and believe that it's been a great year? So I was talking about nostalgia, about the things that perhaps I would have done differently. And my answer was yes. Yes, I can see there's a great year and believe that it was a great year. And I've just described the reasons why I feel that way. And I think every woman, every person deserves to have that experience. And it's not because I didn't have obstacles again. It's not because, family members got unwell. We had all sorts of things at work didn't work out. My baby got unwell a few times. We had challenging moments, but I can still look back and say, yes, it's been a great year. It's all thanks to some work I've done, some inner work, and some tools that I'm still exploring, skills that I'm still developing. And I think everyone has the right to feel that way. And in fact, there would be less illness, mental and physical illness. People would be much more efficient at their jobs. We would have happier families, happier people overall, I think, if we could all reflect back and say, yes, what a great year it's been. So I am in a profession that by definition is serving other people, helping people, just like many other professions. And I think most people are used to helping other people. We're used to giving everything we have for our loved ones or for other people, really helping other humans in need. And I think if we all refocused some of that energy on ourselves and try to be the person we are towards others, towards ourselves, then we would realize that actually we show up as better humans, better professionals, better spouses, better parents for the people around us. So there's no downside to really working on ourselves and working on our relationship with ourselves.
So next up, we have Priscilla, and she shares in our conversation how she'd seen countless doctors and naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners and nutritionists and the whole lot, and how she was forcing herself to eat, I think it was cottage cheese in the evening to get to her specific macro count she was trying to get to. And she started to believe, well, maybe it's just because I'm in my 40s now. She started to tell herself that because now that I'm 40, this might just be my new way of living in this body where she felt like she was carrying more weight than was optimal for her. Yet, even though she had that thought, maybe this is just my new way of living, maybe this is just my new body, there was still a part of her that didn't really believe that. And you'll also hear from Brenda later on in today's episode as well that she too thought, well, maybe because I'm 52, I can't lose the weight. And I personally refuse to believe that just because your body has aged, that all of a sudden it wants to be overweight. And by being overweight, I mean you're weighing more than your body's optimal weight. Now, maybe your body's optimal weight does change as we age, right? Only you will know that. And I think we all have a deep knowing of knowing whether or not we are at our body's optimal weight. But did you also know, just to poke a hole in the belief that when you age, your body wants to gain weight or it's harder to lose weight? Did you know there's actually a collection of people who believe that after your body goes through menopause, your body actually wants to weigh less than it did before menopause because now it doesn't need to hold on to all the fat stores for having babies and breastfeeding? So, I have no idea whether or not that's true, right? And my point is not to pick one side or the other about what your body necessarily wants to do after it goes through menopause and hormonal changes. My point is simply that so often we take the collective belief, kind of the most predominant belief, the majority belief of our society, and we start to believe, well, because everyone thinks that getting older means you gain weight, or getting older means it's harder to lose weight, that so many of us take on that truth without actually questioning it. Now, maybe aging makes losing weight different, but what if it doesn't actually make it harder? So I really want you to hear from Priscilla and hear how her perspective of her body losing weight, even as she went from her 30s into her 40s, completely changed and transformed, and how she was actually able to lose weight with more ease than she ever had before.
Around, I think it was March, I found you on Instagram, Laura, and immediately I was like, okay, whatever she's saying, this is resonating with something that I used to do back when I first kind of in my early 20s, which was really listening to my hunger cues and, waiting until I was hungry, I would eat and then kind of stop when I was full. That was the extent of what I was doing. I really wasn't paying attention to the foods that I was eating, whether or not they were agreeing with my body, or really paying attention to allowing emotion or anything like that. But that felt very natural to me. But I was still very concerned that my body was broken and that this was not going to work again. So I messaged you and you were like, no, I have seen it. I have seen it happen. There's nothing with your age or hormonal issues, because that's where I had gotten into. So it's got to be my hormones. It's got to be that I'm 40 now and that my life is just, this is my new way of living. So when I got to your program, I had been doing a lot of metabolism healing things, making sure that I was eating enough protein, making sure that I was eating enough calories. And what was happening is that my body just didn't want that. I just really didn't feel great eating that much food. Protein specifically, I would sit at the end of the day, eating some yogurt, just making it happen, but was so miserable, really. If I'm being very honest, I was miserable. So whenever, you're like, no, hang on, let's see if this could work. That's when I was like, okay, let's give this a try and see how it goes. Yeah.
And so what do you think it's been that's allowed you to lose weight? Because how much weight have you lost now?
I've lost 12 pounds.
So good.
Which is insane. Because the amount of things that I've done to lose, I would lose maybe 1 pound. It's crazy. So I'm very excited about these 12 pounds.
That's amazing.
I would say to really allow the process to happen. You have in your mind, I want the results tomorrow. They need to happen this way. And it just doesn't add up, right? Because what I know is that if I do my macros, that's how I'm going to lose my weight. But that is not adding up. So now you're trying this completely different thing and you're afraid that it's not going to add up and not going to work. So I just say allow the process to happen, to really respect your body. I'm a Christian, so I feel the way God created my body to be with this innate wisdom, how he created is so beautiful and perfect. So to just trust that, trust that this body is so well created and so perfect. And I say that even with honor and respect for friends of mine who have autoimmunes and, all of those things, there's still something innately good about that body because of how it was created, and just really taking a deep breath and allowing that to happen as it was meant to happen. When it comes to your program in particular, I would say to just go all in. Don't just say, I'm going to try this and see if it works. It's not going to work that way. I really believe that if you're going to do it, go all in, work the workbook, take the time to listen to the trainings, show up for the calls and participate, ask your questions. If you have questions, ask them. If it's not making sense to you, one of the questions that I had was, I haven't lost any weight yet. Like, am I supposed to be losing weight? Because I don't know. Like, am I doing this right or am I doing this wrong? How do I know? And I kept asking and asking until finally it clicked in my brain, like, okay, so you worked through the model with me, and I was able to just kind of have this clarity. And then, just again, continue to just allow it to happen, just giving this permission in my body to be like, I'm going to listen to this and see, not a wait and see. That was really not the approach, but really, I'm going to go all in, just like I, do other things. But that's what I would say, just like this allowance to let your body breathe and let it happen.
Next up, you're going to hear from Geraldine, and you can hear how she had tried so many things before, and everything she tried was like neurotically precise, and she was measuring all her food and tracking it meticulously, and you can hear how tiring and exhausting that was for her. And I want to acknowledge that if that has been a part of your journey, it can feel really scary to give that up because you're afraid of gaining weight. And if you have been meticulously tracking or meticulously measuring or, doing anything of that type of means, when you think about giving it up, maybe you have even before and you have gained weight before, I want you to hear from Geraldine how in her voice, not only does she share with you that she doesn't need to do that anymore and how she's been able to lose weight without the meticulous and precise measuring and tracking, but I want you to hear how much calmer she feels, how much more peaceful she feels, and how much more free she feels. Because when we are hung up on the meticulousness of the tracking and the measuring, we miss out on listening to exactly how our body will tell us to lose weight. And when you're so in your head about it all the time with the tracking and the measuring, you cannot find the calm and the peace and the freedom of being able to live in your dream body free from all the diet rules. So let's dive in and hear from Geraldine so that you too can potentially release some of that fear when you think about letting go of the tracking and the measuring to lose the weight you want.
So what brought me in was when I found your podcast and heard you talking, I was immediately like, oh my God, this woman, like she's inside my head. You knew so many things about the way that I was thinking and my neuroses, if I can call them that I was like, this is not possible that there's another person who thinks the way that I do or did think the way that I do and is like, my current reality is so not working, but I've tried everything else and I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to hold on to my current reality and I'm going to do so many things that don't work and make myself crazy. She was that way. She figured out the solution and it worked for her. And there's a new way. And I was like, oh my God, she has this. She has the keys that I've been looking for. I could tell because you just knew all my thoughts. Honestly, why I came to you was like half of it was the weight, but honestly, the other half at least is the obsession and the obsessive thinking and the preoccupation and the always trying to figure it out and trying to like, it's some kind of game or mathematical puzzle that if I could just dial in, like, is it 1,400 calories or is it 1,450? And being like, shoot, I'm 29 calories over for the day and like getting up and going to walk around the block.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I kind of think that I was wondering if there was a solution because I kind of felt like I'd tried, I wouldn't say that I'd tried everything, but I'd tried everything that I was willing to try and willing to pay for. And I never was into the diet. Like I wasn't too into the traditional diety kind of things. Like I never did shakes and I never did paleo and I never did whatever else is out there. All the things that have names, I never tried those things. I was like, no, that's not for me. I think I was convinced that the answer was in the obsession and the math, that if I just obsess a little more, that surely I will be able to figure out the math. I haven't figured out the math yet.
Because like, how many pounds away are you from your goal? 6?
Roughly, more or less. I'm such a precision, like down to the...
Like 6.7.
Yeah, actually.
7.2? 5.2?
Something like that. Let me see. Let me do the math in my head. 6.8.
6.8. Okay. Well, I'd say drop the 0.8 and say 6, and you're like, we should probably round up to 7. It's more accurate in my math equation.
Right. Yes, totally. That's actually 7. I mean, you can either choose the obsession, and more defeat now. Or you can choose to go in the direction and have the freedom and the calm and the peace. It is totally available.
Next, you're going to hear from Jamie, and she shares in our full conversation that we had together how she had moved across the country with her family for a new job opportunity for herself, and she gained 20 pounds in the process, and she did not want to go back to tracking calories because that is how she had previously lost weight before. And it is kind of a common theme amongst women that I help, and most likely many of you listening, and among the women that you hear from today, that because so many of us have tried so many times to lose weight, so many diets to lose weight, so many exhausting and defeating and just like you want to pull your hair out ways to lose weight, that so many of us get to the point, like Jamie shares, where we almost feel resigned to, well, like maybe this is just my life now. And Priscilla shared a sentiment similar to that as well. Well, like maybe this is just my body now. Maybe this is just my body after kids. Maybe this is just my body now with this new job. Maybe this is just my body now at this age. However we say that to ourselves. And more than anything, I want you to hear from Jamie and all the women here how it doesn't have to be that way. If you feel resigned to, well, maybe this is just how it is for me now, yet you still have that tug inside of you, that desire that's like, but I don't feel as good as I could. Like, your body, if your body had a mind of its own and you didn't have a brain that like told you to eat some extra snacks here and there, if your body could tell you its optimal weight and it wants to tell you that its optimal weight is something different than where you are now, I want you to hear from Jamie and really recognize in yourself that this doesn't have to be your life now. If you're not feeling as energized and vibrant and lean and fit and alive as you want to feel, and as you know, like deep inside know that your body has the potential to feel, then I want you to let go of believing that maybe this is just my life now. And maybe actually your body wants to help you feel more and more and more energized, alive, and vibrant. And it will actually help you do that rather than believing your body is the obstacle to you feeling that way. All right, let's dive in and hear from Jamie.
Around third or fourth grade is when I first started to notice my size relative to other kids and the fact that I was bigger, and I was teased in school for being overweight or fat. So even at that age, I kind of took on the label or identity of like the fat kid. About 2 years ago, I discovered your podcast. It was a Facebook or Instagram ad, social media of some sort. I found your podcast and I started listening to it, but I was already at the weight I thought I wanted to be at. So I would listen and I loved everything you said. And I thought, this is great, but I don't really have any weight to lose. So I thought about signing up, but I was like, I was at that place in my life. It just wasn't the right time because I don't think if I had signed up at that time that I would have gotten as much out of it as I did this time having signed up. But anyway, I was at the weight I was at after Noom. And last year I got a big job opportunity and I moved my family across the country, and the stress of moving and the new job and everything that came with that, I put on almost 20 pounds in like 3 months. And I thought, okay, I am either going to stay at this weight, like I am so done. I'm either going to stay right where I'm at and just forget it, like learn to love this body, or I need to try something that has nothing to do with calorie counting. Like I don't want to write down a single calorie more to lose weight. Like I'm just done. I was so done at that time. I just knew there could be a better way. And I think that small sliver of hope is what, and in my mind, I'm like, either this is it, like Laura's program and Naturally Thin for Life is the answer and it's going to be amazing and I'm going to blow my own mind and all my dreams will come true. Or I'm right where I'm exactly where I am, which is where I started, and I'm still at the weight I don't want to be at, and I still have low energy and all the things I don't want. But I was going to take that chance. I think that over time, and especially as you see the results, not just physically and in weight loss, but also mentally and emotionally and so many other results, the fears are replaced with the actual proof that you can do this. So I think you just get more and more data to the contrary. So if I'm afraid that this won't work, and then over weeks and months, I'm like, this is working, this did work. I think that more and more, slowly that fear gets pushed out because my thoughts have now been consumed and overridden by the positive thought, or the thought that this will work. And almost unlimited hope for the future and my future self. So I think that if I just keep going with everything you've taught me, I will be in a fantastic place.
So the last woman you're going to hear on today's episode is Brenda, and she's over 50, and she shares how she was starting to believe that, well, maybe just because of her age, she wasn't going to be able to lose the weight she wanted. And she also shares how she was just in her own head so much all the time about it, really getting down on herself, like saying, this shouldn't be so hard. Why can't I figure this out? And I want to just share with you that if you also have a version of that mental conversation like Brenda was having with herself, it's so exhausting and defeating to say that to yourself all of the time. I used to tell myself the same thing, almost just like berating myself in my own mind. And I don't even know if I necessarily knew I was doing that to myself. I thought it was like motivation or something that would get me to make a change. I used to be like, just like Brenda was saying in her clip that you're going to hear, I used to say to myself all of the time, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't you figure this out? You are super smart. This should not be that hard. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but I used to also say to myself, I used to be like, there are dumber people than you that are thin. Like, if they can figure it out, you should be able to figure it out too. And all of that mental conversation was so kind of mean and cruel to myself. And guess what? It didn't have me figure it out. That mental conversation was not like, oh, I was mean enough and cruel enough to myself that I finally learned how to really tune in and listen to my body and not track and measure everything. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So if you're having this type of mental conversation with yourself, I want you to glean from Brenda's insight and really recognize anytime you're telling yourself that, and use it as a cue. Every time you hear your brain be like, you should have figured this out. Why can't you figure this out? What's wrong with you? Anything that sounds like that in your mind where you're really mean to yourself about your own weight loss progress, I want you to redirect your brain every time and ask yourself, what would my naturally thin self say to me instead? Because I guarantee you, your naturally thin self is not still beating you up for not being at the weight you want. She's already there. And it's easy and it's freeing and it's peaceful. So how would she talk to herself instead? All right, my friends, let's dive in and hear from Brenda.
I'm at that phase in my life, and many women over 50 can attest to this, is like, no more bull crap. I'm done. I've done the diet restriction. I've done the macro counting, the Noom, the Weight Watchers. There isn't much I haven't done. And I've never been excessively overweight, meaning, I've never been more than about 40 pounds above what I would consider my naturally thin or my ideal frame. That also comes with the fact that 40 pounds, I would gain it, lose it, gain it, lose it, gain it, lose it. And I remember at one point, and I don't know if it was in a podcast or if it was in the membership content, and it was about the fact of, if it was as simple as more restriction, more working out, more dedication, like I am that type A person. If there was a way to do more, I'd have done more. And I tried. And it just is that futile conversation in your own head, like, what am I doing wrong? How can this be so hard? Right. And then I listened to the content in the podcast, and I was immediately like, this is definitely where I see my journey going and how I want to live the second half of my life. Long ago, I was still counting calories. I mean, we're only talking 4 months ago that I was still counting calories, maybe only 3 months ago. the macro counting, that was several years ago, but I just remember that feeling of like failure, shame and failure. Like, why is it perceivably other people can do this perceivably and I just cannot? And maybe I can do it for a little while. And then the second you loosen that white knuckle grip, it all goes off the rails again. How do I fix being a woman who was raised in the 70s and 80s? I was born in 71. So I remember my mom having Tab diet drink. That stuff still makes me shudder. You know, and watching her do leg lifts on the floor and Jane Fonda workout videos and that whole like exercise more, starve more, deprive more, all of that stuff. And I'm like, how do I unpack all of this in a time like the present to really take that next piece, that next step in my puzzle piece of how do I repair and start to live a more intentional life and get a better handle on my eating patterns, why I eat when I'm not hungry, all of those things. And I mean, and there's been stuff that I have uncovered in the depths of my brain as I've worked through the content that have just blown me away. And I've just sat there and went, oh my gosh, like, holy, like, wow. I was raised in a very Midwestern, German, like authoritarian type household. I really was never given that license to say, I don't want to eat that, or I'm not hungry, or I don't want to do something, or whatever that is. Like, that was never part of my upbringing. And so now going, you know, to look back and say, well, did I ever have any natural like hunger signals or preferences? Like, I've had people ask me, what are my favorite foods or what's my favorite dinner? And I don't, because I was raised, when it's dinner time, you sit down and eat, and you eat what's in front of you, and that's it. I can choose to be overwhelmed, to be stressed out, and be anxious or whatever it is about whatever situation, or I can choose a different path. That made so much difference in my life. And I just want to thank you. That particular part for me, that made a huge difference in my life. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's special episode, and I can't wait for you to, again, like I said in the beginning, rebuild, reconnect to that hope and that desire and your future naturally thin self, who is so much closer than you think. And if you want more help with this, if you want more tools and more resources, and you want the full Naturally Thin method, make sure to head over to naturallythinforlife.com/join to check out the Naturally Thin for Life membership and see if it's right for you. All right, friends, I'll talk to you all next week. Hey friend, if you're enjoying the podcast, I invite you to come and check out the Naturally Thin for Life membership at naturallythinforlife.com/join. where you'll learn the full Naturally Thin method broken down into simple and doable steps so that you lose the weight you want peacefully and rapidly and keep it off with ease for the rest of your life. The Naturally Thin for Life membership provides you with the tools to not only lose the weight you want, but customize your mindset and your habits to your unique body and life. As part of the membership, you also get an implementation workbook to ensure your inevitable success. Head over to naturallythinforlife.com/join to get an inside look and tour of the Naturally Thin for Life membership. Hear from countless women who've utilized the tools and the extraordinary successes they've been able to achieve. I hope you join us over there at naturallythinforlife.com/join.